Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another video on a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Now, just so you are aware, all of the references and resources and links to past videos and topics that I discuss in this video will be in the link in the video description. So make sure you check that out if you want more information than just what I have to say in this video, because I tend to be long-winded in my articles, as you're probably aware of. So what I've been discussing the past week, and it's also going to be a series of articles because I feel it is imperative for us to pay attention to this right now, is how diet culture and all its beliefs have etched its way into healthcare and medicine and in what I'm going to describe as wellness culture. Specifically, the belief that has led to the perpetuation of body size stigma, weight bias, and substandard care to larger bodies is cycling through and being used as a means to promote weight loss for health. Now, there's a couple of issues with this whole philosophy, and in order to quote unquote combat obesity, what's happened in the name of quote health is many nutritional, medical, and fitness experts in the wellness communities have perpetuated this, either unknowingly or knowingly for profit, but most likely out of an attempt to help other people, because this is what we are fed in school when we're taught about health and weight. And I don't feel that it 100% stands up to the science and sniff test 100% of the time. So let's just step back and see what wellness culture and diet culture, actually the actions of them, have done to our society. So again, in order to quote unquote fight weight or obesity, and I don't like to use that word because I feel like it's a label that isn't truly accurate and can have a derogatory meaning to it. But that aside, I will be using it because it is a medical term so that you will understand what I'm talking about in this video. So because of this, in the name of health, these communities and cultures have body shamed and failed to provide proper diagnostic procedures for larger bodies. And this was due to their own prejudices. So if someone comes in one body size that's quote unquote normal, and then in a larger body size, they might get two different recommendations. And the larger body size is probably not going to get the same amount of care or access to care and diagnostic procedures than the normal body size. They're just going to be told to lose weight and diet and go on a diet because body size is deemed as the main culprit to all of these problems. As a result, people have been promoting diets of all types without considering and understanding biochemical individuality, and that all diets have track records of weight regain in the long term. So anytime people take in less calories or make it so that their body doesn't have enough nutrition, they do end up losing weight. The problem is for about 80 to 95% or more, it is not sustainable, and weight regain happens in one form or another, and it creates this vicious cycle. And what happens is in these communities is it's blaming the victim, which is the dieter, when the weight cycling actually occurs. And then it's adding insult to injury rather than realizing the solution may be worse than the problem. When weight loss didn't occur or weight regain happened, dieters were told to partake in even more restrictive practices. And these included not eating for 12 to 18 hours, fasting for days to achieve weight loss without keeping it into context of the spiritual aspects of the practice in the context of its roots and cultures and religion. So fasting might have a whole different impact when it's done with a mind-body connection and when someone's in a positive state and doing it for the right reason, versus when it's used as a way to manipulate the body basically on the physical level. people have been told to cut out major food groups. And then as a result, because our body needs different kinds of fuels, all different kinds of fuels, they've had to add in expensive supplements to cover the deficiencies of cutting out these major food groups, or eat in a way that is pretty hard for most people financially to keep up with. People have also been prescribed different popular diets that were based on any form of external measure, kind of a bait and switch. When one didn't work, go to another. And there's no focus on internal cues, ethnic background, culture, and individual preferences. And again, that biochemical individuality of genetics and all of the intervening epigenetic factors that make someone unique and have the ability to process and utilize different nutrients in a way that's optimal for them, or maybe not as optimal for them. So these are good things to be aware of, but they don't necessarily center around weight as a core factor. One of the most concerning things I'm finding, because we know of the benefits of social connection, and we know that the number one risk factor for cardiovascular mortality is perceived isolation. And we know that cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer. And we know that social support is a buffer against cardiac disease. Is that in the name of health, people have been advocating for dietary tribes that allow for only interacting with others who think similarly on the topics of diet and exercise, and excluding bad influencers who may make someone succumb to different foods that are not, quote unquote, good. So if we look at this from a rational viewpoint outside of the culture that we're embedded in right now, just looking at these facts, if we were an alien that came down to Earth and kind of looked at, geez, what are these people doing? You could see where I'd be concerned, right? Because these practices are not inert. They are our food, and how we view our bodies and what we take into our bodies impacts our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health. And I am concerned that the way they're being advocated or portrayed in the media, and I don't think it is done in an intent of harm, but the way that it's being presented, I think, can be easily misconstrued, and people are going on these restrictive diets, and rather than helping their health, it's negatively impacting their social and mental health, and in the long term creating physical health issues with deficiencies. And I can totally understand this. I'm not pure snow here with this whole topic. I used to advocate for weight loss. I used to have a pretty successful weight loss a weight loss practice, or had that in my practice as far as promoting weight loss and putting people on restrictive diets. And in the end, what ended up happening is the weight came back. They were miserable. They felt like they couldn't partake in social events or with their family. They were on guard. Some of them skipped going to social events with their family because they were scared they would eat the wrong thing. And I'm like, wait, step back, Jack. What are we doing? And I do have compassion for all of these consumers that were in diet culture. I was in diet culture for a while. I know how it is, and I have compassion and empathy for my medical and fitness and nutritional colleagues that are in this community, because they believe that they are suggesting what's in the best interest of their patients or clients. The problem is, in this attempt to wage war on fat, wellness culture has lost sight of the fact that one's body isn't the enemy. So I can't deny that weight can be linked or even contribute to certain health processes. Okay. But what I can say is we can't confuse causation for correlation, so they're linked. And even if they were a cause, weight is not necessary or sufficient for most disease processes. In other words, anybody of any size, any body type, any weight can get all different kinds of chronic diseases. And the downstream effects of someone with excess weight can be modulated with healthy lifestyle practices without making someone or forcing someone to lose weight. So that is the difference. And I argue as well that if we continue to try to fight obesity and fight weight, we are going to continue to actually contribute to the problem with more weight regain and weight cycling and blaming the victim. People who want to devote their life practices to this form of rigid restrictive eating that have the means to do so, if they enjoy it and find it beneficial, that's fine. I'm not talking specifically to that population. I'm talking to the people who are really struggling right now, and it isn't causing a happier, more fulfilling life. So in the past, I've explored this definition of wellness. So a lot of times it's focused so heavily on food and lifestyle and exercise. There is not enough attention to community, mindset, honoring one's connection to their beliefs, to their values, figuring out why they want to be healthy in the first place and what they consider as healthy. I became a naturopathic and functional medicine clinician because I wanted to support people's health so that they could pursue and live a better life based on their desires and values. Health wasn't necessarily their end goal. It was their means to feel great getting to their end goal and not be run down by sickness or different symptoms. They wanted to not get slowed down on their path or get sick and miss out important family events or work events. So I think it is absolutely essential that we acknowledge the power of food as medicine and biochemical individuality, and how these different nutrients that are within food can nourish and fuel the brain and body, and give that knowledge to clients and to patients so that they can become empowered and include certain food and these medicinal properties and different compounds into their life for optimizing their health. That's important. The problem is where it leads to perfectionistic rituals and making promises which may never come true. And if they do come true for the people that can obtain that weight loss, maybe not enhancing their life and making it great, except narrowing their life to a small amount of people who all think the same and have to keep up with these practices in order to feel comfortable. Technically, that kind of is drawing a fine line between orthorexia and OCD practices, right? This avoidance restrictive type behavior. So there was this article I read where they explored different professionals' viewpoints on how wellness culture isn't going to save us and it could only make us more sick. And different physicians, and I quoted them in my article, were concerned that these motivations towards self-improvement through wellness, if they weren't consciously used as a means to better someone and for their own desires, they could slip into this form of perfectionism. And these actions alone to achieve the quote unquote best self, if it's unattainable, it always sets somebody up for failure. And these social pressures on the outside to look perfect or be perfectly healthy can also cause issues on lowered self-esteem. It can relate to self-blame, self-criticism, people thinking that they ate something wrong and that's why they're sick, and putting a lot of blame on themselves. Now, lifestyle and diet and exercise are so important to help optimize our health, but there are other factors at play that we need to consider. Environmental triggers, stress, genetics, different, all different exposures and multifactorial things that were presented in our life that we have control and some that we don't have control over. So it's great if we can work on what we can control, right? But if we focus on that, what we could control was the only reason we got these outcomes, it can really emotionally and physically drain someone. And this might be why a lot of eating disordered behavior is so linked to different mental health disorders, and we can't separate the two. We need to look at both at the same time. If someone's anxious, We need to look at why. I talked previously about false anxiety and how false anxiety was linked to different biochemical issues, not from the brain. And when those were corrected, the anxiety went away. And one of them was from low blood sugar, not eating enough, not getting enough protein, not getting enough carbohydrate sources, contributing to symptoms of anxiety. So we need to be aware of that long term, this false anxiety could turn into true anxiety if it creates biochemical structural changes in the brain. Okay. So because my focus is so much on mental health and emotional health, this topic I don't think we can skip over. And I think that there are ways that we can achieve a diverse wellness culture that's healthy and thriving while still promoting healthy diets, um, wellness practices that make someone feel good that they choose to do, while also not making it a moral imperative for people to have to do it in order to be okay as human beings. What we can do was suggested by a psychotherapist and disordered eating specialist, Katrina LeBeau, and I found this in an article that she wrote. She suggested 5 steps to achieve a diverse view of wellness. They are recognizing one's own bias, education of health at every size, sharing this inclusive perspective with peers and other clinicians, spreading the word through media and communication, and allowing for continued growth and understanding, not shutting the door that what we know is what we know and that's it, period. You know, I think there are brilliant minds out there linking different foods and different disease processes to some biochemical factors related to fat mass on someone's body. I think that there's a lot of correlation being confused for causation, and where there is potential triggering mechanisms, there's different things that we can do to combat that without body shaming, without focusing on weight that we may or may not be able to modulate. When I'm working with patients or clients actually in New York, they're clients in New York, as a health at every size practitioner, that's encompassing my teaching them about nutrition, lifestyle, mind-body practices to promote well-being. I don't promise results related to weight. I do say that if they follow what I do and start nurturing their bodies, they will probably most likely achieve peace with food and get to a place where they're comfortable, at least accepting of their bodies and not shaming themselves anymore. And hopefully this will lead to more joy and vibrance in their life. So I do share my knowledge about food and nutrition, but I also take into consideration what will and will not trigger them, especially if they have eatings of a lot or eating, especially if they have history of eating disorders or a lot of restrictive dietary practices. And I consider their background, their ethnicity, their culture, their pleasure factor with food, and what their brain and body could benefit from. So we covered a lot. Okay, so I looked at different ways that potentially weight loss and diet has failed us and has failed the consumer and has failed the medical community, right? Even doctors can feel like failures when they're not getting the results that they think that they should be getting. And when they do get them for 6 months to a year, and then someone inevitably falls off the quote unquote wagon again, and we have to go through more biochemical manipulation, it can be a frustrating process for not only the practitioner, but especially for the client or the patient. So just keep this in mind. Maybe you don't fully agree with everything. There's room for gray here, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this. I think this topic needs to get out there. I don't think the answer ever has been to wage war on bodies or to promote one size fits all approach of what normal is in health. I think we know basic tenets of what promotes health. We want to eat healthy food, or food that's as close to unprocessed that we can get it. We want to move our bodies. We want to think thoughts that promote growth. We want to hang out with people we enjoy, regardless of if they're eating a French fry or a salad. And we want to live our lives, right? And have a proper mindset and probably a sense of purpose or spiritual practice. These are all so important for wellness. I don't want perfect diet and exercise to overlook these. So I know this is kind of long. When we know better, we do better. When we don't know better, we don't. Now it's your turn and your accountability to take this and start to consider, because you have the responsibility maybe to, next time someone brings up a diet or body shames themselves, to really kind of spread this education around if we want to change things for the better. The last thing we need is more mental health and eating disorder issues, and with all that's going on, we need to be helping each other cope with all of the stress in the world. I'm going to end it here because I could go on, but I am going to tell you, I'm going to take on the topic of food addiction later on as well. And then I'm going to dive into eating disorders specifically, because I think it's important to really understand these concepts. Again, mental health is my passion and how it affects all different aspects, especially hormonal, gastrointestinal, which is two of my other passions. So stay tuned. Please do comment. If you are in alignment of a lot of what I'm saying, probably no one will ever be in alignment with 100% of what someone says, but I do invite you to check out all the resources in the resource link. I have free resources. I have classes for both the consumer as well as practitioners, specifically around essential oils for mental, emotional health, and hormonal balance. So I do hope that you check those out, and I will be back for another video real soon. Please take good care, and I'll see you later.